This is A Story of Sorts, the podcast mostly about bookish stuff. Hello everyone, Karina here. On this episode, I chat with Morgan Vega about her debut young adult novel Sleeping Around, and Morgan gives a few tips for writers planning on publishing independently. Have a listen. Morgan, welcome to A Story of Sorts.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So much of my life revolves around books. So I'm a booktuber, I'm a bookstagrammer, I have a book blog, and I also make bookish items like stickers and homemade pins for my shop's tear stained books. But of course, I'm also a writer and author of young adult books. And I work full time in publishing at the tech book publisher No Starch Press. And I also do some freelance book editing on the side. But before my current job, I had some other roles in publishing. I did part time editing for the romance publisher Scarsdale Publishing and interned at the intersectional feminist publisher Core Press. So I did have some part-time publishing roles before I made the switch full-time into publishing, and I worked in higher ed too before making that switch, and more to come. But my experiences working at colleges and universities definitely helped and influenced my recent release, young adult contemporary Sleeping Around, which is of course set on a college campus.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that, which, yeah, we are going to get into that a little bit further, as you said, because, yeah, there is something there I really have a question about it. But let's first talk about your debut novel, Sleeping Around. Tell us about it. Tell us about the plot.
Sure, of course. So, Sleeping Around is a young adult contemporary following a teen violinist, Corey Reed's transition from foster care to college. So, Corey's ready to leave her foster care baggage behind, but when she shows up on campus at Harmony Hall, the dorm for music majors, she finds out something has gone incredibly wrong with her room assignment. And Res Life puts her in a temporary triple. Corey tries to make it work, but one of her roommates does the unforgivable, and she ends up sleeping around campus from air mattresses to random couches. So that is the gist.
Was this always the title, Sleeping Around? Like, because it's a pun, and I think it's really cool that it's a pun. Or did you have other titles before?
No, it was actually the kind of the inciting incident in the title came to me first before anything else, before I started writing, before I had the plot figured out. So it has stayed that since the very beginning. And I was always kind of sold on having that title. So yeah, it's always been Sleeping Around.
I think it's a great title, honestly.
Thank you.
How did the inspiration to write it come about?
Sure. So, a couple different things. I will say I will never forget when I was at college, um, the res life, we had more students than rooms. It's mentioned in the book, but it's a common, and working in higher ed too, it's a common practice in res life. And we had a bunch of people sleeping off campus at hotels and all these random places. So that definitely colored it. But I will say for me, I had some personal experience with living on an air mattress in college for a while, um, which was interesting too, because my resident advisor, the director of Res Life, they knew about it. Basically, to sum it up real quick, I was washing my sheets one day and brought my sheets back up to my room, and my roommate had moved her best friend into our room.
Oh
And
no.
so I basically got kicked out of the room. But yeah, so that happened to me. But my little sister too, she had an experience with her own university of she was a music major, and they had put her into a dorm for music majors, but she was a transfer, not a freshman. And so a week before she was supposed to move in, she got a call and was like, "Hey, we messed up your room assignment. We forgot or didn't realize that you are a transfer, not a freshman, so you can't live in this dorm.
Oh,
And yeah, so she ended up having to live somewhere else, and it all worked out. But all that to say, I definitely pulled some inspiration from real life of, res life. You go to college, and sometimes like flukes like this happen more, so like it happens more than people think. And yeah, so I pulled from actual real life events that seem wild but happen. Yeah.
wow. Because it made me think, I had no idea about that. Like, I never went to college and definitely, of course, wouldn't have gone to the United States since I don't live there
Yeah.
or travel there. But it made me think about when airline companies oversell their plane
Yes.
tickets. And I was like, how is this possible to happen in a college? In college? Like, how is it? Because, you have people having to figure out where to sleep because you kind of thought people were going to give up on it on a room and then they don't.
Right. Yes, that is such a good comparison. I didn't even think about that. But yes, exactly like that. And one of my launch team members sent me a TikTok the other day, speaking of TikTok, showing this, I forget which university, I think it was Purdue University, but they basically did that very same thing where they promised more rooms to people than they actually had rooms for, and they made this whole like dorm cubicle. Like I'm talking like 20 people at least in like this, I don't know, one floor of this building. So yeah, it is still happening and it's wild.
Well, but also the fact that you can just have one room assigned to you and then you get to your own room and someone else took over, that is completely wild.
Yeah, it
Did,
is.
did,
Yeah.
didn't the school do anything about it? Because that's one thing that I kept thinking while I was reading the book and that I wanted to ask, which is you kind of have the feeling in the book that the school is basically, yeah, this is out of my, I cannot do anything about it. You have to figure it out by yourself. And I was like, how can an institution that has so much power and probably employs so many people not have people who are actually taking care of that? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean. And I will say, so I honestly feel like, I mean, Corey had it bad, but at least she was given this temporary triple
Yeah.
situation, of like, this didn't work, but here's an option for you. I did not get a single option. Like I said, like my resident advisor knew about it, and I lived on this air mattress for over a month. So it was a
Wow.
good long time. But yeah, I think too, and having worked in higher ed, there's just a lot of like red tape, politics, rules, and all these things that you don't know about.
Mhm.
And it should be easy. It should be, this person needs a new place to sleep here. It
Yeah.
should be a simple fix. But when you're on the inside of it, and I don't know, you just hearing all these conversations, it's something simple. People don't make it simple anymore. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
do
wild.
do you think it has anything to do with like maybe power and class as well? Like you think that people who are, parents who are maybe more powerful or richer or that they can have more say in that and will have trouble with the school? Or it's just like everybody really has to deal with that situation if it happens?
Oh, I am sure that would definitely be a thing that could happen, because I think at the end of the day, like, I value education. I think it's so important. But at the end of the day, higher ed institutions, like they're a business too. Like they're not
Hmm.
going to exist unless they're making money. And
Yeah.
so whenever we come with that, like anytime, I think, yeah, politics and power and money, it all influences how problems are solved, how situations are dealt with. So, yeah, I think you're spot on.
Why did you decide to write about foster care? And what sources did you use to research it?
Yes, I love this question. Okay, so I actually have always wanted to foster, and I'm actually hoping that my partner and I can someday soon foster. And, in the book,
Hmm.
and the foster care system is definitely far, far from perfect, but I mean, my hope is to one day, like, our home can be a safe space like Tom and Catherine's house is for Corey in the book. And I also think too that many young adult readers will connect with Corey's internal struggles, even if not rooted in the same reason as foster care, because, you know, at the heart of the story, it's about belonging and letting people in and just not demanding perfection when it
Mhm.
comes to loving ourselves and others. And I have definitely struggled with those things. I think most people have too. So I think even though the core subject is foster care, I think a lot there's a lot of universal truths or things that people experience it with it too. So
Mhm.
as for research, I oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much research I did, but I read so many research articles and books. I'm talking from the history of foster care to specific research on, like, for one example, academic achievement barriers for foster youth. So I researched so many things, and I've also had people in my life who've dealt with house hopping through their childhood and teenage years, and definitely seen the internal impact that that has. And I will say too, a lot of my research was I did a lot before I even started writing the book, back when I was first wanting to learn more about foster care, when I had started being like, okay, yes, I think I want to become a foster parent one day.
Mhm.
So a lot of my research was just from that. And then also I did even more obviously when the book started happening. Another thing too that I definitely recommend for all writers, whether you're independently or traditionally published, is to have sensitivity readers. So I
Mhm.
had multiple sensitivity readers too. So yes, but I should mention too, since on the topic of foster care, that I am also donating a portion of my pre-order and my first month sales to a nonprofit that serves foster youth. It's Humankind, and they serve all of Virginia where I'm located. And they have this really great like Cases for Kids program, and they give foster youth like a bag of items, because in the book and on the book cover you see like Corey's holding a trash bag, because that's
Mhm.
usually the case where foster youth, they're it's go 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 shoving stuff in a trash bag and they're on to their next place. But Humankind, the organization I'm donating to, they have this program that gives kids like a book bag of stuff that is their own that they're taking to this new place. So they do a lot of great work, and I'm really hoping to give a lot back to them after this first month. So wanted to put that in there too.
I hope you get to sell a lot.
Oh,
Like
me
in
too.
general, of course, we always want that for authors. We want I think everybody likes to see authors, thrive, and especially if it's a dream, to see that dream come true, to become like a full-time author. But especially when, there's this whole story. I did not know that you were interested in foster care, and I was actually going to ask you, like, what came first, your interest in becoming a foster parent or the story, and then you considered it. So you already answered that now, and it's just super
Yeah.
super sweet that you're also, not only did you decide to talk about this topic and to have sensitivity readers to make sure that you got things right, but you also decided to donate a part of it for the theme that you talk about.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't feel right about it if I wasn't, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
I
of
don't
course.
know how like I could care about it and write about it and not want to, give back, So I'm honestly thrilled that something that I'm putting out in the world, like I wouldn't be able to give as much like just by myself, but now with having this book that I'm like trying to get people to buy and read, that not only I'm hoping that they can learn about more about foster care through reading the book, but knowing that them purchasing it is actually going to help the population they're learning about. Oh, it just, I'm just really happy about it. And like you said, I hope that I can give a lot back to to them, because they, like I said, they are doing a lot of great work in my area for sure.
Yeah, it's especially we've been talking a lot about, own voices writing, and obviously you have
Yeah.
the main character that, well, you were not in foster care yourself. So yeah, it's super nice that you have decided to donate a part of it to the people who are on foster care, and
Yeah.
that you had the idea to write about. That's super sweet.
Yeah. Oh.
I would also like to know, how much are you like the main character, like Corey?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit like all of the characters. So there's definitely a piece of me in Corey. I wouldn't say I am just 100% like her or anything, but there's some definite, comparisons I have between us. I think there's, for one, I definitely like her. I have a hard time making friends, and I definitely struggle with perfectionism. And I think a lot of my own history with anxiety and social anxiety, and even experience of bullying, like I think all these things in my past, even though we're not 100% alike, or my experiences are different from her, I think that what I have experienced definitely impacted how I wrote for her and how I connected with her. Because I will say she was definitely a character. She was one of the easier characters. I mean, I would hope, since she's my protagonist, but she was easier to write for. Some characters were harder than others, but I feel like it was really easy to be inside her head. And I think who I am now is less like her, but I should say, I think 6 years ago, when I started writing this book, I think I was a lot more like Corey back then, because I think now I'm at a better place in my life. I've worked through a lot of things, but I think 6 years ago, me and Corey were a lot alike and struggling with a lot of the same things. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite scene in this book? And can you talk about it without many spoilers?
Sure. This is hard. I have so many favorites, and of course some of my favorite scenes come later, or even at the very end of the book. But one of my favorites is actually at the very beginning, and I it's when Tom, Corey's foster dad, is dropping her off at college. And something about that scene, it's a pretty important scene, I should say, because I think you're learning a lot about Corey in that moment and the beginning of her journey, because she has a lot of growth, as you can see from that scene. But I think there's just something about it where it's just a tender moment, but it's also this bittersweet moment of you're seeing Tom wanting to connect with Corey, and Corey just not being ready, and her still having her walls up and feeling closed off and feeling like she has to go it alone. And I think that scene, why it's one of my favorites, is because if you compare that with who Corey is later on, you just see how much she has let into her life and how much she has grown as a character. And I also feel like on a personal level, like that's what we all kind of want. We want to be able to one day let all of our walls down and really have true, genuine connections with people. So that one's dear to my heart for sure.
And do you have like a scene that was the most challenging, or actually not a scene, just in general, the whole book? What was the most challenging about writing it and the most fun?
I think the most challenging, this is a much larger picture than by a scene level, but started I started writing Sleeping Around for NaNoWriMo National Writing, wait, hold on, National
Novel?
November Writing Month. Yes,
No,
there you go.
National Novel, right? No, NaNoWriMo. Now, yeah, National Novel Writing Month. I think.
Oh goodness, I usually just say NaNoWriMo, so having to say what it is is a struggle.
I used to say
Uh,
NaNoWriMo before I actually heard
oh,
someone saying NaNoWriMo. I was like, of course, makes all sense.
yes, it's coming together now. Yes, but I started writing it for NaNoWriMo. We're just gonna say NaNoWriMo here on
Yes.
out. um, so basically, if people don't know, it's where you write 50K words in 1 month. That's the usually your goal, but you can really set whatever goal you want. But at that time, kind of how I mentioned before, I had my inciting incident and of course the name of the book figured out, but I didn't have anything else. Like I didn't have my plot figured out. I didn't have my characters. I had nothing. I was just gonna pants it, as they say, like I was a pantser. But through the whole writing process, I learned that I am not a pantser. I am a plotter. And on the far end of plotting, like I want everything figured out. I don't want to have any moment when I'm writing being like, what's going to happen next? That's not for me. I'm too anxious for that. So, yes, I think that was a huge challenge because since I didn't have my plot figured out from the beginning, over the course of editing and revising my novel, I rewrote the book 3 times
Wow,
completely. So, yeah,
that's a
there's
lot.
things that it was a lot. I mean, I will say I learned a lot and I'm a better writer because of it, but it was a lot of work and of course very challenging and it took a lot of time and energy. So, but like I said, I'm definitely a better writer for it, for sure.
This week on Instagram, no, sorry, on Twitter, people are saying, write a book you would like to read because you are going to have to.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Oh,
And it's
right.
yeah, I think it's something that people forget, of course, that if you don't just write a novel and it's done. You are going to write and rewrite it and rewrite it again. So
Exactly. Yes. I think now being in because I am very ingrained into AuthorTube. So I watch so many authors on YouTube just talk about their process and things like that. So I think now I understand that that's the case. Like I am not the exception. That's a norm. Like most authors are going to have to rewrite their books so many times. But I mean, back then, 6 years ago, when I'm first starting out, I I thought that was a flaw on my part, or that,
yeah.
maybe I'm not a very good writer because, oh, I'm not getting it perfect the first time, which is so false. And yeah, I think we're so many people, so many authors like that should be the norm because no one's story you should never publish the first thing that you write. It needs editing. We all need editing.
I remember
Yeah.
thinking, like, I heard people talking about editing, like, also for the first time. And I remember thinking, but if someone is editing my book, then I'm not writing it. And that was such a naive way of thinking because obviously things require work and extra work, and you
Right.
can't just work alone, or you shouldn't maybe just work alone on that, especially because there are other people who are going to be reading your book. But I honestly thought that, like, oh, if you can't write a book and just be done like the first time around, after your personal revisions, then how are you writing the book if someone is editing? So
Right. Yes.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that is definitely, oh, I had that thought too. And yes, it is so wrong. And I will say I had a couple different editors and the last editor that I had who I completely love, she actually did work at one of the big five publishers. So she knew what she was talking about. She was fantastic, but she made the book so much better. Like I, of course, had to implement everything, but we
Yeah.
talked through so much of the plot and rearranging things and some of the characters, and it wouldn't be the book that it is without her. And I have so much thanks for her and I put a lot of money down for that as well. So, I mean,
Of
but
course.
it's that
Yeah.
necessary thing that, when you're staring at it, at the same page as an author over and over, like I do editing, freelance editing, and even I'm missing things because I've stared at the same page for 6 years now. So
Of course.
you need an editor. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's still, I mean, like I said, my idea was completely wrong because the editor is just telling you, I don't think this works. I think this would work like this better. But you're still the one writing it in that way,
Right.
following directions, and you can agree with them or not, but you're still the one writing it. But yeah, I was very, very naive in that sense. I just thought, no, you just write a book, you edit it like yourself, you go back to things you didn't like, and then it's either published or not. And that's that.
Yeah, well, you are not alone in thinking that. I definitely thought that at one point too, but yeah, I want more people to know because I think, writing a book, but whatever it is, whatever creative thing you're putting out there, music, art, like things don't just happen like once and you're done. Like and nobody is perfect from the beginning, and how many more creative people would there be putting out their work if they knew that they didn't have to expect perfection from the beginning? So
Yeah.
everyone needs to know you're allowed to get help and practice and make it better than the first time. So yeah.
What was the most fun for you?
The most fun by far had to be just writing about music. Um, so from what another one of my favorite scenes is just Corey just practicing in the music building. Not much, happens while she's practicing, but just writing about her process was, I don't know, I really enjoyed that. And even from writing the music definition, so that at the start of every
Oh
chapter,
yeah, that was very clever. That was
yeah.
yeah, I really like that.
Oh, good. That was actually so fun to do, and kind of like tying in the definition to what is happening in the chapter. And it's kind of like a conversation, sort of. And I think it also helped people who aren't in the weeds of music, who aren't musicians themselves, like give some context for what
Mhm.
is happening. And I don't know, I just really had fun writing about music. And I actually started out playing the violin when I was little. It's the first instrument I learned. Now, if someone had me play it now, I would not sound good, but
No?
that's that's what I started out on. It's just been many, many years, and now I play the guitar and other things, but
Okay.
music has always been super important to me. My mom was actually an elementary music teacher, and she taught me everything I know about music. So yeah, I think having that color the book, having music be such an integral part, it meant a lot to me as a human to have to be able to write about it. And for Corey, it's such a thing that impacts her so much, and it is something that's keeping her afloat during the hard times. And I that definitely resonates with me. I always turn to music when I'm struggling during hard times and things like that. So yeah, I think that's another element that a lot of people can relate to, is feeling sometimes like music is able to get your emotions, your thoughts across better than you can yourself. So yeah, that was definitely the most fun.
I thought it was very clever to write those words at the beginning of the chapters because you use them in the chapter. And like
Yeah.
to be fair, like I play guitar a little bit, but I've never studied music except like in basic school a couple of years, very basic things, just playing the recorder and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's the basic stuff that we learn, but a lot of the words I did not know them. So I was starting to read it, and then like you're including it in each chapter, and that teaches people what the word actually means without you assuming that the person knows. And that's really nice.
Right. Oh, yes. And actually, fun fact about that, and in the back of the book, I cite where I got the definitions from,
Hmm.
but the book that I mention in the back is actually, I had the physical book because it was my great grandmother's
Oh,
definition of musical terms, and that was just a cool thing. I don't even know if I've told my mom that. I need to tell her because she gave me the book.
sneaked out
But
the book.
yeah, it was cool being able to, in my very first book, it's almost like I'm honoring my great grandma who was a wonderful pianist. So yeah, I think that's a really cool part about the book is, I mean, it's not about me at all, but I've definitely see parts of my life, see parts of my family in it too.
Yeah. And how did you start writing? Like, is it something that you did as a child, or did it come later?
No, I definitely have considered myself a writer from the very beginning. I remember in first grade not going to recess so I could write stories
Wow.
inside. So yeah, I've definitely always been drawn to the written word and writing and getting my emotions and my thoughts out that way. But something funny though is that I actually started writing songs. Like songwriting was my first, I'm a writer, I am a songwriter. And then that kind of morphed into short stories, and then that led to novels. So I've definitely considered myself a writer from the beginning. It's just taken different forms, I think, through the years, and as I've gotten more experienced and practiced with it.
You have decided to publish the book independently. Do you want to talk about that? Why you decided this and how it went about?
Sure. So I originally thought that I was going to traditionally publish, and I did all the steps of traditionally publishing. So I queried agents. I even went to the Writers Digest conference in New York and I pitched my book. It was a very stressful situation. You walk into this room of all these tables, all these agents, and you just go up and you pitch your book to them. And
That
I
sounds
did it.
scary.
It was very scary. But that was when I was so sure that I wanted to traditionally publish. So that was a way that when I reached out, I could be like, hey, I met you here and you asked for this, and they'll more likely read the email or get to it sooner than just a cold email that they
Mhm.
get hundreds and hundreds of a day. So, but so I had partial and full manuscript requests. So things were moving along, but months went by and then eventually years went by. And I just got to the point where I was ready for Sleeping Around to be out in the world because I want to write the next book. I want to
Yeah.
put more books out and I don't want to be sitting on this one. And I will say too, I also learned, through watching so many author tubers and then also now working in publishing, that whether or not you're independently or traditionally published, like you're going to have to market yourself in your book.
Mhm.
And that is such a huge part of the publishing process, such a vital part that honestly, when I learned that, I was just like, I'd just rather do it myself. I'd rather, if I'm going to have to do that and all these other things, like I want to be able to touch every part of the process then and learn, because I've learned so much from self-publishing. And yeah, I mean, I even designed the book cover. I never had
Oh,
done that before. So yeah, that was just something that meant a lot to me, that if I was going to do this, if I was going to self-publish, I wanted to be able to touch every part of it and learn through every step of the way. And wow, when I publish my next one, it's going to be so much easier because I learned so much.
you already know the steps.
Yes,
Do you have
exactly.
do you have any tips or words of advice for those considering publishing independently?
I think my best piece of advice is to give yourself loads of time, and way more time than you think is necessary. I think a year out before I was going to publish, I had started making a publishing plan, with steps in my my marketing plan, all these things. I tried to figure out what I was going to have to do. And I mean, just publishing alone, like self-publishing, you have to research so much into the process and what to do. And I mean, luckily for me, working in publishing, my current full-time is in book marketing. So I know a lot about marketing. However, you also know it's super time consuming. So yeah, so I had things planned out a year in advance, but my schedule just went out the window at some point. It just completely just was gone. And I had to come to a point of, like whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Like I can't stick to the schedule anymore, and that's just going to have to be fine. And just know that at the end of the day, like whatever could possibly go wrong, it's not the end of the world. Like on August 3rd, my book is coming out regardless. So it's just going to have to be okay. But for example, of just why things take so long is I had thought that I had given myself plenty of time with getting my paperback and my hardcover proofs. So I had ordered proofs for myself, and they took weeks to get to me. And then by the time they got to me, I had edits. And so then I go and I add my edits, but then it takes weeks to get it to actually like load in the system, and then more weeks to get the final proof. So anywho, it is a lot longer than you would even realize. Like who would think like I need to have 2 months to be able to get my proofs and edits done? Like I don't know. It was just way more time consuming than I even imagined. So that's more of the practical advice, but more of the, I don't know, not so tangible advice. I will say, if anyone out there is like me before I self-published, I mean, even now, there were nights where I would just lay awake, hadn't even put my book out, didn't even have advanced reviewers, and I was just laying awake scared that I'm just gonna have all 1-star reviews. Everyone's gonna
Oh.
hate it. Like I just imagine the worst, and I will say it's definitely been a journey, and I'm not done. Like I'm still trying to be healthier about it and have better self-talk about it, but get to the place where I mean I hopefully have somewhat gotten there, where it's just that your story, the meaning, matters more than the fear of it. So yeah, so your story and what it means to you and what it could mean to people that read it eventually outweighs all that self-doubt and fear. And I think I got there because it's out there in the world. So but yeah, that I think that there was a moment when I knew, okay, it's time to publish this, because like I actually want people to hear this message. Like this message matters more. So yeah, that's some less tangible advice, and it's hard, but believe in yourself and your story.
And I do have the feeling from what I see online that people are reacting very positively about it. I really like it.
Yes.
Like I really enjoyed it. So I can only speak about like my experience, but I do I have the feeling that yeah, it's going good.
Yes, I have felt so relieved. I think having the advanced reviewers too, I think it got to a point where it's like, oh, okay, like people actually like this. My worst fears aren't going to come about. So yeah, I've been really, really pleased with the advanced reviews, and I've actually had a couple trade reviews. And those were really good, because you never know with trade reviews if they're going to be super harsh or what, but they have all been glowing. So I am thrilled as a debut author for sure.
So now is the next question after this, like what are you working on at the moment? Because I'm pretty certain that that gives you like an extra push to continue to work on your novels and on your stories.
Yes, so I actually am working on another young adult novel, but this one is a paranormal. So
Ooh.
definitely, I know a little bit of a turn, but it's very much in the work still. I have my first draft, but I'm actually, going to probably rewrite it all.
Oh.
But which
Part
is
of the
good. It'll
process.
be good. Yeah, part of the process. And yeah, no spoilers, but it has some themes that are really near and dear to my heart. And I love the characters and sleeping around, but I love these characters so much too. So I'm excited to one day in the future put that one out into the world. But I will say, I have been in the back of my mind, sleeping around. I had intended it to be a standalone. But the more that I think about it, I kind of want to write a follow-up novella situation.
Hmm.
So we'll see. So I might come back to those characters again too.
So about Corey or other characters or another
I think it
character?
I think it might follow another character,
Yes.
but yes, uh-huh. It's kind of, I'm still
Because
pondering things, but
because
yeah.
I don't want to spoil anything, but there is one character that I really wanted to see. I could see a journey. Like there was a journey
Yes.
happening, although it's like, it's not the main story. But yeah, I would totally like to know what went on there because it's something that again, I'm not going to spoil it at all, but it's something that I relate to and the kind of
Mhm.
turnaround and journey and getting out of it in a sense. And yeah, that would, if it's what I think about, then yeah.
I think you know exactly. Yep. That sounds
Sorry,
right.
we're all talking about, let's not talk about it, but people will have to read the book and I think they'll know.
Yes,
I think I
I
know, I'm
think
not
so
sure.
too.
I think I know.
That's
that
amazing.
that would be very interesting. Yeah, would love that. So, and do you have any dates or like do you have any plans for when you think you would like the novel you are writing now to come out?
I mean, after this, I have learned to give myself so much more time, but I would love it if it could be in the next year or year and a half. That would
Mhm.
be my my hope, my dream. So fingers crossed for me.
And you're still doing YouTube, right? BookTube.
Yes, I
Okay.
am more so on Bookstagram as of late. It's just been really hard for me to make videos lately, but yeah, so I'm more so on Bookstagram. That's where I hang out the most, but one day I'll just keep uploading videos because I really do miss it for sure.
Yeah, but it's also, I imagine it's also a lot of work because there's editing in it and preparing for it and with I already
Yes.
see that with podcasting and it's just audio. So with video it yeah, I
Oh,
imagine it's a lot
yeah,
of work. So you need a lot more time.
exactly. Yeah, it's pretty time consuming. So I mean, props to all the people out there that are doing a booktube channel on top of going to school and have a
Yeah.
part-time job. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, like you have a 1 hour interview, for example, and I'm speaking from my experience, and it takes you about 2 hours to edit it. You have to do the
Right.
intro, etc., etc. So again, but there's no video involved. And you
Yeah.
can just repeat what you said if you said it wrong. So with video, I really applaud people who are doing video.
Yes, I remember in the beginning of doing videos, I would be like, I can't publish this because I have lipstick all over my teeth. I was
Oh
like, I can't.
no.
But now if that happens, I'm like, I just have them in a video description of like, please ignore the lipstick. I'm not filming this again.
No.
Yeah.
So we were talking about that booktube and Instagram. Where can people find you online?
Sure. So you can find me on my website, morganvega.com. That's probably the easiest place to go to find me, but I have my YouTube channel, Morgan Vega, and I'm on social media at Morgan Vega Write, Write. And like I said, I'm definitely more active on Instagram, but you can find me pretty much wherever. And you can also purchase Sleeping Around wherever books are sold, including Book Depository and IndieBound. So definitely go check it out.
Now, the last question of the podcast, which is always a very difficult question for book lovers, of course.
Yes.
That's the point. An all-time favorite book and a book you'd recommend right now.
Yes, this is very hard. But
I
I would
always
say one of
say, sorry to interrupt you, but I always say that
like,
people can, like, it doesn't strictly have to be one book, but just stay within like three, 1 to 3, but it can also be one book.
okay, okay, good to know. Yes. I will say one of my all-time favorite ones is actually a young adult contemporary. It's Starfish by Akemi Bowman.
Mhm.
And it's just so good, but it really came into my life during a time where I really needed it. Basically, the gist is the main character, Kiko, she is graduating high school and she is going to be going to college for art. And she's just dealing with a lot of internal struggles, a lot of family stuff going on, personal life stuff going on. But why it's one of my favorites is because I read that before I was diagnosed with social anxiety in
Mhm.
particular. And after reading that book and knowing that Kiko has social anxiety, I had never read a book where I felt like just so much of it was a lot of my self-talk in my head. And that was just a big moment for me to be able, I think any book like that where you feel seen and it helps you understand a part of your identity, like it means so much to me, that book. And I love everything Akemi Bowman puts out, but that was just the first book that I read and I was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I deal with, and it just meant a lot. So that is one of my all-time favorite ones. It's definitely one that I will continue to reread and continue to tell everybody to read because it just means a lot to me. Yeah. And a book that I would recommend right now, honestly, I feel like I would recommend anything by Claire Legrand. I read one of course, there's Saul Kill Girls. I think a lot of people in the book community have heard about that book, and
Mhm.
it is so good. Um, Loved it so much, but I actually fell in love with Claire Legrand with Some Kind of Happiness, and it's a middle grade. There's magical elements to it, but anything by Claire Legrand is just gold, and especially Some Kind of Happiness. That's another book where when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is a lot of like internal thoughts that I have too. And yeah, anyway, Claire Legrand, Akemi Bowman, they're two of my favorite authors for sure.
Morgan, thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been so wonderful to talk with you. It's just been so appreciated for you to read the book and then also have me here. It's been my pleasure.
It was my pleasure too. I really, really enjoyed your book. So thank you for writing it. And yeah, and the best of luck in the rest of your career. I hope I can continue to read you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, keep on the lookout, but I'll definitely let you know. Might have you be another advanced reviewer for my future book.
Oh, that's an honor. Thank you so much.
Of course.
You can access today's show's notes via my pod page, which you can find along with all of my social media links at linktree/Karine Pereira. In there, you'll also find a link to a Story of Swords playlist available on Libro FM, containing the audiobooks recommended by our guests, which will be updated as the show progresses. If you'd like to give Libro FM a try, you can use the code A Story of Swords at checkout to get 2 books for the price of 1. This offer is valid for new Libro FM members in the US and Canada. Libro FM is an audiobook platform which allows you to buy audiobooks directly from an indie bookstore. Check them out. If you have enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting A Story of Swords on Patreon. Patreon is a platform which allows you to contribute monthly to the podcast in exchange for extra content, such as early access to episodes, a shout out at the end of an episode and on Instagram, and choosing a theme for me to talk about on the podcast. You can become a patron at patreon.com/astoryofsorts. I'd also be very grateful if you would simply leave a review and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. As usual, I'll be back in 2 weeks with a new interview, but before that, I will be dropping an episode with the books I have read last month. I'll talk to you then, and thank you for listening.